Good day, everybody. Welcome back to the Deal Scout. This is take number 2 because I screwed up. We're having a conversation with Malcolm, who buys blue collar businesses in Texas. Malcolm, welcome back to the show. We did the 7-minute series. You just graduated through that. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about who you are and your story. So, welcome back to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That 7 minutes was awesome. Learning to keep the answers concise and give the value you can give is always a fun challenge. So appreciate you having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we meet in a coffee shop and I go, "Hey, man, who are you?" How do you typically answer that?
Yeah, I'm a girl dad who happened to be a former athlete in college. Now I run Ironmans, and that keeps me busy 90% of the time. And then I find a way to make some businesses work and operate outside of that. So I squeeze in the hours where I can. But I'm a big believer in scaling businesses kind of in a lean fashion, and building a business where my kids can see it and they're proud of it. So it was cool. Kiddos this past week were able to come down to one of the businesses that we own in South Texas and hang out with, just see the people, put face to names, all that kind of stuff. See my office manager, get them colored pencils to draw, and the kids just kind of wander around. Wow, I didn't realize how big it was, all that kind of stuff. And so it's fun. It's fun for them to see tangibly, like this is what their dad does, and being able to kind of show them, hey, there's a lot of people that I get to take care of and be responsible for, and I feel that way, right? So when dad's trying to knock a little bit of thing out at night or in the morning before they get up. The real goal at the end of the day is to be able to just provide an amazing experience for people employed through the companies that we own.
That's super cool. So you really needed to develop a business model that supports your Ironmans and being a girl dad. That's the reason we're focused on scale and buying businesses, right?
That's right. And I candidly, it's just by happenstance. I'm born and raised in Austin, and I live in, I think it's the 10th largest economy in the world now in Texas. And so the plethora of businesses is vast. We got 3 to 4 major hubs between Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. You got so much going on activity wise between people moving here and employment. I think I was trying to explain to somebody the other day, sitting in Austin, I've got 4, maybe 3 universities with over 25 to 50,000 students in the area. Like the plethora of just talent and people and everything that's happening in Texas is big. So it's such a coincidence. I think that there's people that are doing deals and doing opportunities in other states and other parts of the country and the world for that matter that have that same kind of edge. There's always a slight edge if you can figure it out. But I think, I just have this random serendipitical situation of being in Texas, born and raised, and it resonates with the business owners that I get to engage with.
Yeah, that's super cool. Now, I'm going to try to pronounce the name of your company because it's spelled very unique. It's like Tessera. Did I say it right?
That's right. So it's slightly off, but it's Sarah. So give it a little backstory there. My great grandfather owned 50,000 to 70,000 acres. No one actually remembers how many it was in the end, but owned on the border of Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So there's Mount Sitsera. And so my family farm was there. And if anybody's a historian or a historic buff, there was a lot of civil war and things that took place. So the Portuguese actually owned Mozambique for a period of time. And what ended up happening is that they had a civil war. That regime was taken out, and then there was Rhodesia, which was next door, and then that converted into Zimbabwe that we have today. And then simultaneously in South Africa, when my family ended up moving there, we had apartheid breakup that happened as well. So there's been a lot of family moves because of just civil war and challenges. But there was the family farm at the base of Mount Sitsera, and we saw pictures from it. But my great grandfather built that, and really what he did as he employed hundreds and hundreds of people, but also at the same time became a beacon in the community for both good employment, but also a good product. And so we try to embody the exact same thing. We want to be high quality products. I don't want to be bottom of the barrel kind of services or products that we build. I want to build high quality, nice product. And at the same time, I want to take care of my employees internally.
Wow, man. So you buy businesses,
Mhm.
right? That's your business model is buying businesses and helping them scale. You implement systems and processes, SOPs, and software to help scale. And
Yep.
we talked about this in our 7-minute chat, but you specialize in maybe the commercial space, so commercial blue collar work. Kind of give us, for people who didn't listen into the 7-minute, give us an idea of an ideal target for you guys to acquire.
So we look at businesses that have been in business longer than 10 years. We like family owned or founder family owned still. There's just some nuances that happens when a business is transitioned to before us. We like something that's been stable, something that has 15% net margins or greater, kind of bottom line, and just have a stable characteristics to them within the community. It sounds crazy, but I'll be on a call with an owner or somebody that's bringing a deal to me, and I'll immediately just throw it onto Google and just say, hey, what's the reputation of this business? Just like forefronting reputation of this business. And that's often an awkward conversation because some people don't even look at their Google feedback. And
Yeah.
but yeah, we look at businesses that have this long stability in the community already, and something that's a nice platform to build off of. Because if I'm going to do this for the next 20, 30 years, hopefully, and we're going to buy 10 businesses over the next 10 years is our goal. I don't need to hit a ton all at once, or I don't need to rush, or we can be super patient. And so we try to have very candid conversations with the owners, whether or not these businesses will transition well. And sometimes they just won't when they're heavily dependent on the owner. And if he wants to be out in the next 3 weeks, there's some challenges with that, and there's some risk. And so we have to make some price adjustments and structure adjustments on the transaction. And so, not to get too much in the details of it, we are looking businesses that can transition well, because there's enough risk to do that already.
Yeah. What are the risks of transitioning? So we go out, you and I, we're hanging out, and we decide to go buy a business together. We already said, we learned our lesson about residential services. Let's focus more commercial. Let's
Yeah.
blue collar. This kind of range in prices, 5 million and above, right? 10-year in service, 15 million net margin at the bottom, right? So we got our target. So we go buy one. What are some of the challenges for the transition?
Yeah, so we obviously try to protect our downside looking at customer concentration. I think that's a no-brainer for most people. But what ends up happening a lot of the time is that there's reps and warranties that you can have within the contract to help protect some of this, and some holdbacks to protect this. But there's the unmeasurable or uncalculable, that's a word, I'm not sure. But if being able to understand what is the risk when you find out there's a warranty issue. Classic example, you buy a business, there's a bunch of warranty claims, they weren't presented in due diligence. You get the holdback and you can kind of make yourself whole, but there's the intangible aspect that goes along with that, the reputation that goes along with that. And so that's the one thing that we've learned over time is, don't just equate the dollar of the warranty that you get to, go back against the holdback aspect of it. So that's a big part of it, kind of the unknown, intangible aspects of that reputation that can be fluttered, that's not communicated. And then the other part is I like to look at the people side of things. It's great to have key employees, but for the key employee side, how is the leverage to the owner or the leverage to the business for that key employee? So here's what I mean by that. If I come in and someone's like this absolute expert, or they hold the license or licenses for that matter, what's the risk associated with that? What's the downside? What's the speed? Like, unfortunately, we try to retain everybody. That's our goal. I think when you're buying a business, you're buying the assets of it, and some of that is the knowledge and the people that previous owners being able to aggregate and bring together. But people leave for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes they leave for things that they expected that was communicated from the last owner that never came true. I had one guy who told me that every call that he answers that's a customer and they end up being a sale, he should get 6% of the commission on that. But he's not a sales guy. He just picks up the phone every once in a while with warranty claims and other quality control situations. And so that was a very awkward conversation. Ultimately he decided to leave after a period of time for some other reasons. But all that to be said, the leverage that people have over the business is one of those things that I try to determine and see how fast we can mitigate that risk.
Yeah. I worked with a construction company, and one of their main salespeople had all the relationships. And when they left, the pipeline dried up, and
Yep.
that was a risk that we had to look at how to overcome that, right? How do we duplicate this person? How do we maintain relationships? So that, people, if it wasn't for people, life would be easy, but it would also be very lonely and boring. But in an acquisition, key players are very important. How do you, when doing that, how do you start having the conversation with the owner?
Yeah.
And then the key players, right? You don't want to set off a bunch of signals. Like, how do you walk through that dance where you're not trying to, alert anybody, fear of that, like being acquired and ripped, maybe from a private equity, perspective? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, great question. Learning lessons. I tell everybody right now, I think we're in the walking phase. I hope to get to the running phase here soon. So learning, right? But one of the things that we found is there's some owners that are super eager to engage that conversation with the owner or with the employees. Hey, this is the new owner. We're like in due diligence, and it's like, wait, slow down a second. Things might not all work out. But
Yeah.
they're mentally checked out, right? And so if they're mentally checked out, they're trying to make that transition and they're trying to involve us. Even in the due diligence process, I've had circumstances where they're trying to involve us in like the operations of the business while we're doing due diligence. And how would you make this decision? What's your thoughts here? And all that kind of stuff. And so managing that is super important. And then I've seen the inverse. I've seen where people, hold back the communication that's related to the transition. And then all of a sudden they make this abrupt introduction and people just quit on the spot. So I had a buddy that literally recently happened that in the last month or so, bought a landscaping company. 3 people quit on the first day when he got that introduction on Monday. So I think there's no perfect way to do it. You try your best. You try to communicate as best you can. Everyone's going to respond differently. Some are going to respond to, yes, I've been so excited, I've been waiting for this opportunity. And some respond to, what does this mean for me? And so it just, all those questions come up and you try to clarify those as best as possible. And the best way to do that for anybody that's out there that's new or wanting to buy a business soon, make sure payroll does not bounce. I have never had that happen, but I've had friends that have that happen. You make sure payroll never bounces on those first few weeks, and do not transition to some new payroll system. Adopt it no matter what it costs. Figure out what it is. That payroll, as long as that keeps going for a little while, you slowly build trust because people they worry about their jobs, right, and their livelihood and the responsibilities that they have. So that's a big one that I learned from somebody else. Never had a circumstance, but I've seen it, and it doesn't turn out well. So hope that
That's
helps.
gold right there, right? A lot of people they'll go acquire something and they're like, all of our new systems, processes, partnerships, all that stuff, you're switching over today.
Yeah.
And there's always an issue with payroll when you're doing a switch or something like that. And for blue collar, I grew up digging ditches, right? Like I grew up on a construction site. I lived for a long time in my life, paycheck to paycheck. If that shuts off, I immediately lose distrust,
Sure.
right? In the situation now, because my trust was with the family operator,
Yeah.
right? And let's just say we've been working together for 25 years or something, and then one day I don't get payroll, and I got this new group coming in. So that was gold, man. Really good job.
I never anticipated going into this space. So I got started doing blue collar deals mainly because I was working with another firm years past, and we were buying kind of hospitality type businesses, and we were interacting with a lot of blue collar vendors. I mean, that's where I started interacting with folks, the septic installer, the roll off dumpster, the porta potty guy. We were doing all these different hospitality businesses, and I just started interacting with them and come to find out that like a lot of their employees are paid weekly. A lot of their employees are treated very poorly. And so when we made this transition to me buying businesses in this space, I saw it firsthand. A paycheck was late by like 2 hours when we switched from written hand checks to digital deposits going into their account, direct deposits. And it was late by 3 hours. And I had a guy walk off just making a big scene. And it was like, wait a second, come to find out, like he had been screwed or people had taken advantage of him in the past. And so, truth be told, like that solves a lot of issues. When people feel stable about their life circumstance financially, you can tend to kind of work through some of the other stuff for the most part, personnel wise on the different rungs, but personnel wise. So
Yeah.
big to give out.
When it comes to treating people well, you guys are more buy and hold, right? You're not trying to buy and flip these businesses, right? Because then it's just like, you're a number, we're buying, flipping, we're going to increase profitability and see you later.
Yeah.
And everybody has different business models and whatever works for them. But like your business models, buy, hold, and treat people well long term.
Yep.
Why is that important to you rather than, hey, let's buy this, let's flip it, let's make a bunch of money? Why?
Great question. I've never been asked in that way. I think it's the decision-making tree, as I shared kind of in the 7 minutes of the goalpost and what you're shooting for. If I want long-term stability for my own personal life, and I want to build, what we're doing here, kind of a long-term vision. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've definitely gotten calls from the family offices and other groups that are like, hey, heard you bought this. I wish we could have got it. What's it going to look like? What are you building? What's the status? All that kind of stuff. We've gotten those calls, and they're flattering. But if I'm building with a marathon kind of mindset, I'm going to make different decisions. And if I'm constantly teeter-tottering based on the next shiny object that comes down and says, hey, I think you're worth something, let me talk to you, I'm going to make different decisions. And so I need to have consistency. And one day, maybe that might change, but that's not our intention. If that's not our intention, we're going to make consistent decisions along the way.
Yeah. Getting to this part of buying companies and such, you said you were working with a group in the past that was doing something similar in hospitality.
Yeah.
You're in somewhere in your 30s. I don't know exactly, but if we go back to you going to college, what were you trying to study? Did you go? I don't. I made an assumption that you went to college,
Okay.
but like
Okay.
growing up, learning about what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Is this what the direction you wanted to go?
Yeah, so I had quite a bit of shift back in 2016. I candidly, I came out of undergrad. I played tennis in college at James Madison University.
Oh,
Had a great experience there. Came on to be an assistant coach with the team there, and was very grateful for my coach, then became boss, for giving me that opportunity. And so in that process, learned a lot about college athletics and learned a lot about kind of what the prospects were for me and kind of in that space. And as I kind of looked at the landscape, was given the opportunity to go over to University of Virginia and help over there as well. But prior to that, undergrad, I started as a business student. I thought I was going to go into business. My parents are both in business in some form or fashion. I thought I'd go into business. And then I had a second semester accounting professor. I don't think I tell this story very often, but a second semester accounting professor that was like a very intense capitalist. Let's put it that way. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Truth be told, I was really put off by business. The way he described business, the way he described financials, the way he described just revenue and generating revenue, all this kind of stuff. I was like, nah, like this is not for me. I think there's a bigger thing about people within business and how people work. So I actually switched to become a psychology major, and started working with the dean of students and the head of one of the heads of the psychology department on research on leadership development, and basically the science behind how do you develop great leaders. And so I came out of undergrad with that intention, and I thought, hey, I'll go into college coaching. Maybe I'll go to get a grad degree in sports psychology. How do you develop these great leaders? And so I started taking counseling classes and other sports psychology classes, and came to realize like people really matter in all circumstances, but they have these small intricacies about them that really allow you to make a difference in the scenarios that I was in. So here's what I mean by that. Sitting in a room with a small group of people and understanding what's the dynamic, what's the feedback you're getting body language wise, what is the thing that's taking place, being able to read that. I took a specific counseling class where we would sit in a room, not any bigger than 3x4, two cameras pointing at the client, and myself as the counselor, and we would switch roles throughout the semester, and we would get filmed both ways, and we would get feedback, very honest, very direct feedback about body language, about how that person responded based on what that person just said, or how you should be sitting to make them feel like they can give you more information, all those types of things. What does it look like to lean in? What does it look like to sit back? You crossed your arms there. All this stuff matters to be able to project out to that person they're in a safe environment to be able to be the authentic self. And I took that concept and went into grad school to get my MBA at the University of Virginia to apply it to businesses. So I got the robust understanding of business and financials, but then I said, if these businesses are predicated on good people hiring great people, which is what everybody tells you, right? Hire great people, get them on the boat as best you can. You then got to know how to work with them and understand their intricacies about what's going on. And it's fun. I've got a team all around the world now. We've used a bunch of different people, but also a US based team. And being able to understand who's good at that kind of EQ side of things has made a big difference for us to be able to kind of do some leaps and bounds that we've been looking to do.
Yeah, EQ. Anytime someone mentions like an abbreviation, an acronym, or whatever you call that, like what does that mean, and why is that important for you and your business?
Emotional quotient. And so being able to understand what's dynamically happening emotionally with that person in that scenario. I always tell people I am probably not the best person to go speak in a room of 1,000, because it would be like just mental overload, because I'd be reading the room constantly to try to understand the feedback. But sitting in a room with 20, 30 people or less, I do really well because I feel comfortable reading and understanding what's the message people are receiving in this process. And there are very good people that can do that. And that's why I think where the business really happens well, when people can sit in a small setting and be able to understand what's happening dynamically between people.
Yeah, especially for family and small family operations and such like that. Like dynamics are so important. I grew up in a family business doing construction, and I'll tell you, like if you don't understand what's going on in the family dynamics father, son, father, daughter, whatever, the husband, wife,
Yeah.
like that, all those little things impact the business. So
Yeah.
if you can't look at that and go, hey, there's something off here, like, hey, let's talk about it, because you could unveil opportunity to
Yeah.
really add value,
Yeah.
or a warning sign like, I'm not getting involved here.
Yeah.
When you're reading a room and you're going through basic due diligence and you're sitting across from a owner operator family business, right, 15-year 25-year in the business, and you go, hey boys, we're pulling out, like, what are some of those warning signs that you see that you would go, I'm not going to buy or invest in this business?
Um, People have to have a servant heart in these businesses, not a controlled heart, right? And so
Ooh.
that dynamic is tough. There was a business, I'll just geographically explain it in the industry. There was a business in Dallas area that they did sale and resale and renting of storage containers. Great business financially, loved it. Nice husband, wife owned the business, super nice people. There was one particular key employee. We're in Texas, that people have rights. I totally get it, but there was one that would really exhibit his freedom in that right, and it was a control thing. It was his ability to establish, I'm in charge. There's a limit. You can only do so much to push me around or communicate to me what you need from me or whatever the case may be. And that dynamic was going to be very tough because he had a lot of leverage from a knowledge base. So he was a control type person that also had the skill set to match it. And so he was given a ton of responsibility because it helps the owner kind of get through some of the challenges that they were trying to get through. But there was going to be some real transitional trouble there. And so I walked away from that business. I'm disappointed, that we had to do that. I thought it was a nice business. But explaining that to an owner, hey, this is a risk that I'm not willing to take. And I've been communicated about this risk from 3 other key employees. I think I have a better picture, or I think I have a sufficient picture of the severity of this risk that I can't move forward. So that was a tough conversation. We had gotten pretty far on that deal.
For sure. And it's hard, especially due diligence isn't always cheap. And you've invested a lot of time,
Yeah,
energy. Like, you get attached to the people. Like, you're like, ah, man, I really like you. And you
sure.
build this relationship, and there's expectations. People start envisioning what it's going to look like in the future. And then pulling back, I had to do that, man. It's hard to walk away from a deal. But
Sure.
sometimes the best deal you do is the deal you don't do.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say that the real kind of challenge or sorts is you're going into a scenario where people are uncertain about what this means to them. You're asking them for information that they've probably never aggregated before because you're trying to make your framework of decisions. And so you're trying to build that immediate trust. Hey, you can pass me this information. Hey, it's okay that you may not know this, but give me the raw data, all this kind of stuff. And then you all of a sudden know at the end of it, like, I'm going to eject potentially from this. And also they might eject potentially from this as well. Like, it's hard on those employees. And so we're always sensitive to that. I think it's ideal to get a best sense as you can of those key employees, but recognizing that there are obvious sensitivities around that.
Yeah. Well, how would you classify your business? Would you guys consider yourself, private equity, or like, how would you guys, if someone says, what kind of
That's a
business?
term that most people understand colloquially or understand kind of on the street, if that makes sense. But we're a Texas-based holding company with no intention of selling. And so we buy these businesses, we structure them in such a way that our intention is to hold them for a really long time. We look for platform opportunities, is the term that sometimes is used in this space. Certain industries and verticals as kind of a platform build on. So we like the opportunity to be able to kind of build these for the long term with that intention. And so we've structured accordingly to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I got to go back to the servant heart, control heart. How, I've never heard it said this way.
Yeah.
How do I do a self check in my own brain that
Yeah.
I'm approaching things with a servant heart, not a control heart? Because I'd rather, to me, people matter, man. You and I had these conversations in the green room before. How do I do a self check to see which one I am in the moment?
Great question. So I heard it once. I've got a friend who sits potentially on a different side of the aisle from me on certain thoughts.
Yeah.
And he and I have been friends for 17 years, I think it is now,
Mhm.
something like that. I think it's longer, 18, 19 years now, but who knows? The point is that at the end of the day, our goal is the same. The way we would go about it, how we would solve maybe a social issue or how we would solve a certain circumstance is different, but our goal is the same. We still care about the person. We still care about them being successful in their own right and all that kind of stuff. And how we go about that would be slightly different potentially. And so when I look at the business, a lot of people get hung up on how you do things, how it's done, how it's supposed to be done. But missing the ultimate goal is like these two people collectively have the same goal in mind. If that's the case, like give them the autonomy and freedom to be able to do that. So that's the check, in my opinion. You check, is the goal the same? Or are you trying to make sure that the outcome, call it the 80% of the doing in the middle, is done the way you want it done? And that's the challenge. And when someone's unable to see it in that kind of dichotomy of choice, that's where I think people stumble from a servanted kind of mindset of, hey, this person's, maybe they'll go about it differently, but they've got the same goal in mind. Give them the resources and tools to do it their way. Allow them to have the autonomy and the ability to do that rather than trying to control what you think is the most optimal way to do it.
So good, dude. Yeah, that's really good. Solid. We have a few more minutes, so I want to ask you because I think that this is so important with a family business looking to scale. And I said the numbers wrong. It's 7 million is your target base, right? I said
Yeah,
5.
in that middle target transaction size, absolutely. Somewhere in there is a little lower, but ideally we're looking at businesses that generate about 750 to about 1.25 kind of net. And then we work with a multiple of some kind of market multiple, kind of 2.5 to 4.5, somewhere in there is tend to be kind of in the range
Okay.
on these types of businesses. And so, you can do the math on that, but yeah, that's kind of our sweet spot where we think we can add tangible value. And we talk about private equity, play kind of lower than that lower private equity kind of group, where we think we can add some real tangible value.
Yeah, I got it. Why would so let's just say it's my family business and we're doing something commercial, blah blah blah, in Texas, but right around
Yeah.
the block from you. My son was born in Grapevine, so
Oh,
I have a
cool.
Texan in my family.
There you go.
Yeah. So I come to you and I go, hey, I've got this business, and one of my buddies told me that I should talk with you about maybe selling or transitioning. What would be going through my brain that I would want to have a conversation with you?
Yeah.
I've got 20 employees,
Yeah.
15 employees, whatever. Why would I want to have a conversation with you?
Yeah. There's multiple thoughts there, but the biggest one is that our intention is to hold on to this business for a long period of time. There are three options, in my opinion. There's maybe more and variations of different ones. There's three options, in my opinion. Someone can go, be sold into a bigger group, a firm of some sort that will flip them and move them really quick. Sell them in 5 years again, 7 years, somewhere in that nature. Then there's kind of the strategic buyer of sorts, someone that's going to go in and that's already in their industry. It's going to buy them, kind of roll everything together. And then there's us, where our intention is to hold on to it. We think we're buying the brand name, the reputation. That's part of the assets that we're buying. So we have no intention of rolling that or dissolving it or anything like that. That's our intention. Circumstances might change, but truth be told, I haven't had that circumstance yet. And I know a lot of folks that are in a similar situation to us or do things kind of in different parts of the country that have the same mindset, is that there's value in that name and that reputation. And so, yeah, that's the real key thing for us. You have to pick kind of the decision of what you want this business to look like. When you get to talk about it in 5 years, do you want it, known that it's flipped? Do you want it to known that it's, dissolved into something else? Or do you want it to know that it's stand on its own and it's thriving and we've doubled revenue and we're thriving and all these people are still employed and all that kind of stuff? That's the real sell. And then candidly, you're going to get some young folks that have some bright ideas, and I think that we bring a different angle to what that looks like to scale these businesses. They need software implementation, they need standard operating procedures, they need the ability to understand org structures and pathways for people. Call it professionalizing the business a little bit more. That's what we bring to the table. That's the playbook that we know we can play, and that you can be proud of. In 5 years' time, the person that was your office manager is now a director of operations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Bottleneck is a term. I'm working with an organization, and one of the key players, the key leaders of the company who started it's been doing it 25 years. Like, we're talking, and he goes, I just found out that I'm the bottleneck. I went on vacation and all of these decisions piled up. And now that person's overwhelmed with the amount of work that they now have to do, not only to get back on track, but to carry forward. Bottlenecking for family businesses is a real concern.
Yeah.
Releasing control and starting to create those scale process systems, software integrations, and that's a great concern for these people because they've been doing it their whole life
Yeah.
and teaching, old dog new trick. What's one tip you have for, the acquisition, merging, and then, helping that person realize that they can start releasing control?
Yeah.
What's a piece of advice you have there?
Um, so tangibly, the first few weeks, and we've got it on our website, our 100-day plan. It's a document that people can get.
Cool.
But the big thing is in the first, we have that kind of first intro. There's a first kind of conversation with everybody. And then 2 weeks after, we do another conversation. And in that second conversation, I present the org chart. I've at that point gotten a sense of kind of what people are, what they do, kind of who they report to, all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating to find out who thinks they report to somebody when they actually don't, or whatever the case may be. And so we put it on there, and I let people absorb it for a moment. We usually do steak dinner. I go to Texas Roadhouse. We go get some steaks and some nice meals. We have a good lunch. We have a conversation. We call it family lunchtime. And in that moment, I show them the org chart, and I'm not on it. And that's a huge emotional and kind of confusing and all this kind of stuff where people just have to digest that for a second, because the owner, whether they've ever drawn it out or not, they're on the org chart. The best is when I see the email. So it's just tangible little things. When you take over a business, you got to get everybody's email that's been going out, or sales emails, and figure out where they're going and kind of figure out what's happening with all the email flow. And it's the best when I get an email that has like chairman at company name, or like head CEO, or whatever it may be. I've seen them all. And so it's great when they give all these titles, but it's confusing to the audience. And the audience often is your internal employees, because they're trying to understand who are you and what is happening within the business that it relates to you and me, and dynamics all around that. And so when I say, hey, none of you directly report to me, it's very confusing, because one, your senior supervisor kind of folks and your senior management, they're like, okay, so who do I report to? And that's when the KPI kind of conversation happens. And we start explaining, here, you're measured very objectively, not subjectively. It's not my job to come in every quarter, every year, and to evaluate you on a team player rubric or something like that, which I've seen. All these kind of things that I think are just antiquated processes. And so, yeah, controversial statement. I believe that the owner should not be on the org chart. And I think that decision allows you to make different decisions for autonomy and responsibility within the organization.
That's so interesting. When the owner's on the org chart, what it does is it puts crap under like they have to do.
Yep.
And that's not a business.
Yep. You got 20 employees, you got 20 assumptions about what that means when the owner's on the org chart. They all have different interpretations about it, because they've been in past experiences, or they've experienced you for the last couple of years and how you operate. They've got all different interpretations of what that is. And you make a different decision when they say, yeah, you don't need to call me. I don't need to be involved in that. Oh, that's your team you're hiring for.
Wow.
Here's the measure at the end of the year.
All right. Putting the owner hat on, taking my name off org chart, it's an attack on my identity. I've been doing this.
Yeah.
My name's on this business. What do you mean you're taking my name off the org chart? Like, what am I going to do? Right?
Yeah. It's a huge shift. It's a challenge.
It's a
It really
challenge.
is. It's a real challenge. And as we scale and we bring in new operators for deals after we've acquired them, and all this kind of process that we do, that's the EQ, being able to take that set it aside and say, what's the best interest of the business? I'm going to make decisions in the best interest of the business. And one of those is getting rid of your ego. And it's a hard reality, because candidly, like I was telling a friend on a mountain bike ride a couple of weeks ago, if you're an owner getting started, you're just starting out, you got to have a little bit of chip on your shoulder. You got to be able to bet on yourself. So all credit to you. But once you get to this phase where you have a 7-figure business, you got to start betting on other people. You got to be able to know and understand how this person is going to add value, take your business to that next rung, not just take on tasks, but really elevate the business. And you take a bet on that. And again, controversial take. I've got friends that disagree with me. I hire before the need. I hire based on where we're going. Sometimes that person feels like there's not enough for them to do. And I like watching to see what they do. My kids, I've got 2 little ones, a 9-year-old and almost 6-year-old. And we often talk about what happens when you're bored. What happens? What do you do with yourself? What does it look like? And being able to create that skill set to be able to be productive when there's obscure moments or there's kind of gray moments.
Yeah. Thinking ahead, planning ahead, taking initiative, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I heard it say this way: ego starts, humility scales.
I love that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really cool conversation, Malcolm. For people who want to connect with you, do a deal, and maybe I know that you guys are looking for operators. You guys are looking for talented operators. Kind of 1 minute plug on what kind of operator. What does a good operator look like for you guys?
So, truth be told, I think the best model is to develop somebody and to work with them to get them up to speed, and rather than just drop them in and hope that it all kind of works out. So we are doing an internal development program. Ideally, we're rolling out this year, so it's all raw and new in some form or fashions. But we've had a lot of people reaching out through different forums and different aspects. And so, candidly, the goal is to have somebody internal for 9 months, and then be able to be a part of that due diligence acquisition process and go in as the new operator through kind of a smooth transition. So call it first 3 months is kind of ramp up on just how we do things. Next 3 months is kind of being a part of that due diligence process, hopefully. And then finally kind of in that closing phase, in those last few minutes. So that person, male, female, we're looking for somebody that wants to be in Texas for a long period of time, that likes alignment, wants to be a part of the decision making about cash. That's the big thing too for us, right? We want to get you to have that decision and be in that driver's seat, not be coming back to the mothership or coming back to the group to ask, how do I deal with this, or what does that look like? You're measured on your ability to produce a great business for the employment, for all those people, and being able to optimize that. And so all that to be said, we want somebody that wants to be a part of businesses that are kind of long-term intended, be able to generate nice, good environments for our employees and kind of the brand name of what we're building. And just, again, be here in Texas. We're exclusively looking at deals, and people come from any out of state, happy to take a look. But yeah, we're wanting to be here long-term.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good fit for someone who's like an integrator. They have this desire. They maybe been in corporate. They've been trained. They're really good at building systems, processes, operations, people, leadership, but they're not ready to, maybe they're not ready to go out on their own, but they want, more of a partnership and a model that you've created. So for people maybe like that, and they want to know more, what's a good place for them to connect with you and maybe find out more?
Yeah, you can go to our website, Setsera. Setsera is spelled TSETSERRA.com. I'm all over LinkedIn and Twitter. You can get a hold of me on there. But yeah, it's called our Generalist Vice President program. And again, like I'm saying, we're taking interviews and process of people as they come along. We've had a lot of interest over the last year. We started communicating what we're building, and candidly, we want people that, again, that are interested in learning and wanting to develop their skill set and be in that driver's seat. You have to have a slight chip on your shoulder, but you have to have the ego and the capability to be able to suppress that at the same time. And so, all that to be said, we love folks that are just eager to be in these small businesses.
Yeah, super cool, man. Thank you for your time. For people listening in, you can go back and you can listen to his 7-minute deal making presentation, or you could, check out, this conversation. But his contact information will be in the show notes. So if you have a deal that you'd like him to look at, or maybe you're a good fit for that general VP role, reach out to our guests and say, thanks for being on the show, but find a way to do a deal with them. That's the purpose and mission of the show, is to connect deals and deal makers. If you have a deal or you have a system or a process that you'd like to talk about here on the show, thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, maybe get you on the show next. But till then, we'll talk to you all on the next episode. We love you all. See you then. Bye-bye.